the District Council fashion show.
Oh, look at you.
This is what your taxpayer dollars are.
Very nice. We got the portraits.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to our March 20th Police District Council monthly meeting. My name is Anna Rubin. I use she, her pronouns. I am the chair of the 20th Police District Council.
I'm Doyle Bakers. I'm on the nominated committee.
And I'm Deirdre O'Connor, and I am the community engagement.
Before we get started, we always like to take a moment to acknowledge and appreciate the land we are on, the space we are able to use, and all of those who have stewarded that land and space before us. It is a great appreciation that we are using this space and this land today. And then before we get started, we always like to go over a few community norms. In our 20th Police District space, we like to encourage people to both take space and make space. So if you are somebody who doesn't frequently speak first in meetings or in group settings, we encourage you to share and bring your voice into the room. And if you are somebody who frequently does like to share and bring their voice into meetings, count to 5 and then bring your voice into the room. And then we're very excited to hear what you have to say. Land the plane, please be as succinct as possible. One person speaks at a time. We all want to have an opportunity to share what it is we are sharing. And speak from your own experience. Please use I statements when speaking and speak from your own significant knowledge base. Even if we are all reading things all the time online, in the news, wherever it might be, what is your own personal experience you can bring to the table? That is what we want to do, so thank you. We'll start off this evening with public comment. So the way our public comment works is we will have 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes per speaker for up to a total of 20 minutes. We just ask that you, if you feel so, if you feel comfortable, step up to the front of the room. You can address us, you can address the folks in front of you, whatever feels most comfortable to you. Please just state your name so that we can make sure we have it written down. And just so that folks know, our meetings tend to be quite participatory. This is not your only chance to speak during the meeting, but every public meeting in the city of Chicago has public comment period, where this is sort of the official time for you to make your statement, make your piece, and have it be attributed to you in the minutes and agenda for this meeting. So we encourage you to do so at this time. Is that Patrick Armstrong? We'd love to hear you.
Thank you so much. Hello,
Wait,
everybody.
Patrick, do you mind coming up here so that you're in the middle of the line?
Sure.
Maybe stand next to Anna?
Whatever.
And oratory, just make, so that my phone can hear you. Appreciate it.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patrick Armstrong. He, him pronouns. I live in Ravenswood, Lincoln Square. I've spoken to the 20th District several times when I've attended about gun crimes. One of the things that I've noticed when I attend my beat meeting, the CAPS meeting in my neighborhood, is that I'm often hearing the police report about gun crimes, people not going to jail, and the revolving door. And one thing, it took me a long time to think about that, because one of the things that happens in Chicago is a gun crime is not having your FOID in Illinois. And another gun crime is having a gun in your car that is not securely safe. The first one of those, at least, is a misdemeanor. The second one is a felony, as I've found out recently. Where I'm from in the South, I was raised in Georgia, lived in Louisiana for 16 years. Neither of those are crimes. And often these, the lack of a FOID card and the possession of a gun inadequately secured in your car can be used to create a crime for someone who has not committed any crimes or has no history of crime. And I'm thinking about this because I've read today that O'Neill Burke, the state's attorney, has initiated a pilot program in the 7th District which allows, under Kim Fox as the state's attorney, anyone making a gun arrest had to run that past the state's attorney's prosecutor's office to make sure there was probable cause. and that there was enough evidence to sustain a conviction. O'Neill Burke has changed that in the 7th District as a pilot program that they will likely expand to other parts, where that now just goes to the lieutenant on the desk duty. And there is now someone under arrest for a felony for having a gun in their car without a carry concealed permit. And again, I bring this up because getting a carry concealed permit in the state of Illinois is very expensive. And there's not a lot of training on how to secure your gun correctly. And for people who live in higher crime neighborhoods, and this is not one of them, but people who do, in America, people will try and have a gun to defend themselves. And if there is no knowledge on how to secure that gun correctly, add that to pretextual police stops, which we've also discussed here, and you manufacture felonies out of people trying to defend themselves from people who are not criminals, have no violent history, things like that. I really want that to be a point. I want to make sure that that pilot program does not expand very far, because this is what gun crimes, and while I am a gun control believer, I know that gun crimes can be weaponized against certain demographics specifically, and have been weaponized against certain demographics specifically in Georgia, in Louisiana, in Alabama, where I was born, and Chicago.
Thank you.
Is anyone else interested? Oh, Karen, yeah. Maybe step a little closer.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't fill out the form. I'm Karen Goldner, and I live in the 20th District. And I appreciate Patrick's comments, because I had a similar sort of related concern. You guys have done a great job of leading the effort to create a sort of Northeast Chicago-ish area, restorative justice, thank you, court. And I read, and maybe I'm wrong, but that the new O'Neill Burke, thanks, is going, I'm having trouble with words today, that O'Neill Burke is going to remove gun crimes from crimes that are eligible for the restorative justice courts that we already have in Cook County. And for all the reasons that Patrick said more eloquently than I'm concerned about that. Thank you.
Yeah, any other speakers?
Well, for a moment of transparent facilitation, our guest speaker for the day has not yet arrived. And we're so delighted for him to do so, because it's going to be a really terrific presentation. But he is not yet in the building. But maybe not. Having fun with you. This might be the perfect time.
There he is.
Yeah? Perfect. Well, we can do this little thing that I do every time. Hello, so happy you're
Hello, welcome.
Okay, this is my favorite thing to do, which is just encouraging you to please go to our Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability official website. And as I will say every time, it is case sensitive, lowercase PTC 020CH5. And you can find our resources there, information about our upcoming meetings, anything you might want to know. Today, before we dive in, we just have to take a quick little vote to approve our meeting minutes from February. So I will move to do so.
I second that.
Beautiful. All those in favor of approving our February meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye. And so those will be up on our website in the not too distant future. Don't you worry about it. Okay. Do you need to breathe, drink some water, anything? I feel like I'm rushing right in here, but tonight we are so honored, excited, and grateful to hear from Jose Abance, the Community Engagement Specialist. Is this the correct title? I didn't actually ask you. Is that not your title?
You know, my signature is off. I'm a senior program manager, it's all good.
I'm so sorry. The
No,
Senior Program Manager of the Policing Project for the Chicago Neighborhood Policing Initiative. Is that true?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Who is going to be walking us through a report that was released last September. The Neighborhood Policing Initiative and Reimagining Public Safety Report. And what I'm going to say is, I'm going to abandon this chair. You should feel free to cycle through this as you see fit. It is totally your call, and I think this will, make it a little bigger. Yeah.
Awesome.
About that.
Okay.
And thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry I'm a little late. My name's Jose Abance. I'm a senior program manager with the policing project, and we'll get into this, but the Neighborhood Policing Initiative is the Chicago Police Department's reimagining of community policing. And my organization, the Policing Project, which is a nonprofit, was simply asked to try to help figure out what community engagement might look like under this community policing model. So this is not our program. I also don't work for the Chicago Police Department. We're just simply a partner that was trying to build out what community engagement might look like under the Neighborhood Policing Initiative. And I'll dive into what that looks like shortly. So this report that was Anna mentioned, back in September we released a report, the Policing Project did, where we looked at Chicago's community policing programs and also their alternative response programs. And basically we just took a look at what Chicago's doing, and then based on our work across the country, based on our work within Chicago, we provided a number of recommendations for what the city of Chicago could do to improve their community policing as well as their alternative response programming. In October, we released an updated version of the report that kind of just provides a little bit more detail on the methodology, the data we use. In case you're interested, you can find that on our website. So for this report, I will emphasize that the engagement that we did for this report, we did a number of surveys, both group surveys and one-on-one interviews. Mostly this was with community members and stakeholders on the south and west sides, where the community policing program, which is called MPI for short, Neighborhood Policing Initiative, is currently operating. So MPI, which I'll get into again, is in 10 of 22 police districts. The 10 districts are all on the south and west sides. And so naturally, as we had built some relationships, partnerships on those sides of the city, a lot of the surveys we did and those perspectives that we collected from community were rooted on the south and west side. So I say that because maybe this doesn't apply to your district or your community in terms of what was mentioned or shared with us in the survey. So the survey went into what community felt around their public safety, what made them feel safe, what didn't, their perception of police, perception of elected officials, perception of community resources, and I'll run through some of these things, and these are in quotes because this is what people said. So based on community perspectives, a lot of people shared, when it comes to public safety, it doesn't exist. They felt like it was up to them to feel safe. In other cities where we conducted this survey, people would mention, my neighbor makes me feel safe, the church makes me feel safe, my elected officials, police. Here in Chicago, unlike other cities, we were surprised to find that people felt like safety was really solely their responsibility and they couldn't really rely on anybody to keep them safe. And within that context, public safety feels like a fantasy. And mostly people's way of being safe was isolation and staying inside the home, staying away from people, which is unfortunate. Community perspectives on police. This was interesting because people felt like police didn't always keep them safe. Something we found interesting, that they felt both over-policed and under-policed at the same time on the south and west side. People weren't too confident when they called 911 in terms of the type of response they might get or how timely that response might be. Yet, despite these challenges with the police department, on an individual basis, a lot of people had empathy for police officers. A lot of people, although they didn't feel like they could trust the police department as an institution, could identify an officer by name and say, hey, I trust that officer, I can call that officer, and I know that I can get some sort of service. So, you know, for just to let you know, we found that intriguing. Community perspectives on elected officials. They felt like elected officials weren't really keeping anybody accountable to in terms of keeping their community safe. So really, they felt there was a disconnection between them and elected officials. Now,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I don't want to cut you off. Is there a reason why the north side was excluded from these studies? Is that like a CPD thing, or did you guys decide that that's where you wanted to go based on certain crimes or whatever the data showed?
Yeah, so we did that based on because we were working on the south and west sides. And because those were the districts that had the neighborhood policing initiative. I will say the police department, when they were rolling out MPI back in 2019, they piloted it in the 25th district. And that encompasses North Austin, Belmont Cragen, and Mosai area over there. And then as it expanded, they went kind of rest of the west side, south side. In many ways, to be honest, the police department felt like they needed to try and pilot this community policing initiative in areas where maybe there tended to be more calls for service, maybe there was more higher rates of crime, that kind of thing, and then they wanted a mix of like socioeconomic, brackets, I guess. I don't know how to say it, but just people making kind of different levels of income. So for those reasons, that's why 25th was selected originally, because it was like a common, the district had a mix of like a Latino population, a black population, and there was also a white population on the northern end of that district. And as it expanded, it kind of,
Went the other way.
yeah.
Well, I got another question. I want to let you finish your presentation.
Definitely. And I will say, from our perspective, we wish the Chicago Police Department had a comprehensive community policing program, whether that's MPI, whether it's something else, and I'll talk a little bit about what it means to operationalize community policing, because what we've noticed is the city doesn't know how to operationalize community policing, and I'll be happy to be a partner in advocating how do we spread this or expand this beyond the south and west sides if it's something that north side districts are open to receiving and it's something you all feel like would make your community safer.
Yeah. How did you guys, who got access to these surveys?
In the responses? Or what do you mean? Like
did you door knock? Yeah.
Oh.
Or how it was?
Yeah, we did this kind of, we relied on community, so part of this effort as we launched the Neighborhood Policing Initiative, our organization, it was a team of five of us at the time, we're basically just organizers, and we just go across the district in which MPI was being rolled out on, and then just have a bunch of one-on-ones, convene community members, and then eventually on a monthly basis have these meetings with community members, organizational stakeholders, and the police department. From there is kind of where we started saying, okay, these are people who could take these surveys. But then we also went around and just posted flyers like around the neighborhood, went to different organizations in the communities to try to spread the word, and just we wanted to engage people that weren't familiar with MPI as well, and weren't familiar with alternative response. And I'll get into, this is where I'm at now. When we talk to people about alternative response, and mainly here in Chicago, the alternative response program is CARE. People were like, no way does that exist. Like, we showed them a flyer and they thought we were making things up. They thought there's no way that this exists and I don't know about this. And it really spoke to the disconnection again between like the city rolling out something and then community members being the last to know about something, if they ever get to know about something, but also community members not being involved in either the planning or the implementation or providing the services that, in this case, CARE is looking to provide. So in many ways, when we talk to people about alternative response in Chicago, it was really trying to like convince them that something like that exists in Chicago, and they were like, wow, we can't believe this. How can we become involved? How can our services be tapped into? Why haven't we been told about this? Was kind of the sentiment. Now I want to get into CARE. As we analyze CARE, are we all familiar with CARE? If not, I can dive into it a bit. Okay. So CARE exists in, it's not across the whole city. It's in, it might have expanded since the beginning of this year, but it's in several police, 7?
Yeah, so 19, 1, 4, 12, 7 and 8, share 1, 6. There might be one that I missed. Anyway,
Okay.
close enough.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
How are they doing?
I will tell you how they're doing. So when we looked at CARE, what we did was basically we looked at calls for service, calls for to 911. And we published this report last year, so we looked at calls for service back in 2023. And based on the calls for service, we saw that over a 2-year period in which CARE has existed, this number is a little off, it says 1,200, but we found about 1,400 calls were responded to by the CARE team. The CARE team is simply like civilians who work for, I believe, the Chicago Department of Public Health, and they are not even dispatched, but they have access to like a radio, and if they hear a call coming in that they feel like, first they have the capacity to respond to, but also the call is like eligible for them to respond to, then they'll respond to that call. So over 2 years in Chicago, CARE responded to 1,400 calls. Now, I want to just, in comparison, based on our work across the country, research we've done, there's been other cities that have way more than the 1,400 calls, and just kind of, I just want to ask, like, why is it that Chicago doesn't have or way more resources dedicated to this? We were always talking about the response times for 911, and we're always questioning what police are doing and not doing. And when we really think seriously and invest in an alternative response program, we could actually reduce unnecessary police contact with civilians and really dedicate police resources to the things that they're trained to do. And I think that would make the city safer from our perspective. Part of like why CARE only had 1,400 calls was they're very limited. They only operate Monday through Friday at a very limited time, business hours. So when we think about the weekend or the evening when things are happening, we don't have alternative responders, at least not through the city, responding to that. Again, based on our research, there are models out there that already exist in operation that Chicago could easily learn from, that are operating 24/7 and are handling all types of calls. That's the other thing with CARE, that we're only for CARE responding to a very select few type of calls. So I think they're like behavioral health and mental health calls, but there's way many more types of calls that, based on what other alternative response models out in the country are responding to, that we think the Chicago Police Department could be responding to. So when we looked at 911 calls in 2023, we see here about 1.25 million calls were serviced. And then of these, we estimated about 34% could be diverted and actually responded to by somebody that's not an officer, that doesn't have a gun or a badge. And this is simply could be done if we just expand what CARE is responding to. And so we're proposing, or not proposing, but part of our recommendations are, hey, why don't we look at CARE and how, or not CARE, but an alternative response model that is responding to parking situations. There's traffic incidents with no serious injuries or no injuries at all. Burglar alarms. In parentheses, that's the amount of calls that in 2023 were dialed to 911. So as you see here, parking, towing, stolen vehicles, 125,000 calls. These types of like calls for service, these are really things at the end of the day that you're like looking for a report for like insurance purposes. It's after the fact almost, and so for that reason, you know, it's none of our faults that we're told to call 911 and police show up. That's just the number we're given, and then that's who shows up. But what we're saying is, hey, how can we look at what other city departments, community-based organizations or responders could be responding to some of these things? When we looked at burglar alarms, nationwide, over 90% of burglar alarms turn out to be false alarms. So that's, if we just apply that to Chicago, 47,000 calls, and 90% of those potentially are just false alarms. Reports, another thing, just animal control, 8,000 calls for animal control. This is actually in my neighborhood across the street. On one of these very cold mornings, it was like a dog barking for 3 hours, and I went across the street and nobody was answering the door, and there was this dog there barking, and I was like, I don't want to call 911, but who do I call? So I called, I didn't call 911, I called the police department. I live in the 8th district. I called the 8th district station there, said, hey, there's a barking dog, it's been barking for 3 hours, it's so cold out here, I don't, like, what can be done? They said, call 911. So it's an example of, like, you're telling me to just overflood or burden your system with calls that are, you know, not immediate, you know, a violent act is occurring or a crime is occurring. And, you know, we talk about police resources and response times. It's unfortunate that this is the system that is set up. This is just a further breakdown of the calls for service, like just by percentage. Look, I want to point out, like, check for well-being, 14% of calls for service. Parking violation 14%. Auto accident, 12%. Like, we have a lot, if you add these up, we have, you know, it gets us to that 34% that we estimated could be diverted. And also, I do want to say, like, if Chicago were to think about expanding this, it's not like it'd be doing something new, like that they're like, oh man, we don't know what we're about to get into. Like in LA, the police union over there proposed like over 30 things that they're like, all right, we're willing to stop responding to these things. So if we have big cities like LA trying to do this, there's no reason why Chicago can't do this. There's plenty of models out there. This is, again, just more on parking, stolen vehicles. I was in the 19th district last month. Good to see you again there, sir.
I'm memorizing this.
Yeah. Maybe you could present this for me at the next meeting.
I don't want to be a single issue person.
No.
You're bringing in the civilization, as they call it. You know, that we're very, very bad versus Houston, LA, and New York City. We're hiring civilians to do the kinds of things that you're talking about.
And this is what I'm getting into here. There's examples. Here I list these bullet points. There's cities like San Jose, Virginia Beach, Berkeley, Fort Worth. They're hiring civilian, non-sworn people who can handle some of these calls. So in Chicago, what we found was that yes, the finance department is handling things around parking, but they could even go further beyond that and have the finance department actually be dispatched by OEMC, and instead of like that would you know, I don't know if unburden is a word, less burden, just reduce stress on the system so that you know, if we just think about the role of OEMC here, and again, But that also kind of highlights the many actors that need to come together in a city like Chicago to actually make this happen. It can't just be, oh, we, the Chicago Police Department, are going to launch this. No, it requires training, policy, OMC to jump on board, maybe the workforce needs to be trained. There's a lot of things that need to go into this, but there's models.
I got one question.
Yeah.
Well, I got a lot of questions. my big question when I hear you say all of this about other places, and I mean, honestly, on the skin of it, it sounds really good. It sounds like something we need to be investing in as a city. But do we see a reduction in crime in those areas that are implementing these practices? Like, if you go to Houston, if you go to LA, and you look at, like, for instance, like, they're like police brutality numbers, or their, level of arrest, per crime, or convictions per arrest. Are those numbers changing along with the staff change that we're seeing there?
That's a good question.
The per capita is for sure, I know
Yeah.
that for a fact. The per capita in LA and New York and Houston is better than ours. New York and LA particularly better.
And what I will add to that too is cities like LA and New York are way ahead of Chicago when it comes to just innovating what is expected of law enforcement. LA has maybe it's because they had a consent decree way before Chicago did, but LA has taken major steps in across time and years to reduce gang violence, reduce gun violence, and have police officers be more centered around community collaborative problem solving. So has New York, although New York might be taking a step back with this mayor. But Chicago is kind of not really keeping with some of these bigger cities, I will say that. But to your question, we could look deeper into that to see like what the correlation might be and what that looks like. And I'd be happy to try to maybe follow up with you on some of those questions.
And then what about cost? Is it becoming more cost efficient? Like, are they saving money in the city's budgets?
Some of the research really suggests like a lot of the money being like saved on like just lawsuits. Like,
right. That's enough.
Yeah.
Right? you won me over, right?
Yeah.
I think, as a city, we have to start thinking about revenue generating flows, and one of that would be to triple the staff at the Department of Finance and just be responding to parking violations, right? And taking that off of the police would generate the city more money, because the teams that they have now, I work for an alderman, so I'm very familiar. The teams that they have, it could be 2 weeks before they get out to an area that I ask them to enforce. So like, people really do need to be a little bit more forward thinking on these kinds of things.
These are great questions, and that's ultimately where you can convince people. When you start talking dollars, we should convince people, hey, this is worth it. We should look into this, invest, staff it. So those are important questions, and I hope that as this year, I know that's one of the priorities of the district counselors is alternative response. So we're willing to try to help out, provide resources, make connections to stakeholders or people that have been doing this, so that Chicago is as informed as possible when it comes to proposing or innovating its alternative response program. So now I want to get into the second part of the report, and it's centered on the neighborhood policing initiative, which I mentioned is the community policing effort of the police department. And really it's made up of these two components. One is internally, the police department restructuring itself so that it focuses wholly on how it practices community policing and collaborative problem solving. We hear a lot right now in the media about every officer is going to be a community policing officer, but I can tell you right now, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to operationalize that, even though the neighborhood policing initiative has been around for 5 years. And so we've, through this program, which again is something the Chicago Police Department said we want to try, and we're like, okay, we will help you implement this. One was restructuring itself, its internal operations, so that officers are actually maintaining geographic integrity. Right now, as we speak, beat officers don't stick to one beat, so you don't know who your beat officer is on any given day. Which means these beat officers have no ties to the community, have no idea what's going on any given shift, and can't tell you what really the issues are, because when they're responding to calls, they don't have the time to do follow-up. They don't have the time to try to figure out what is the root cause of this problem that I've been called out here to respond to. So through the Neighborhood Policing Initiative, a role is created so that officers have the time to do that. It's called a District Coordination Officer. I'll talk a little bit about what they do, but through their role, it provides more time. Up to 30% of a beat officer's time is off radio when this is implemented successfully. That 30% of their time could be dedicated towards collaborative problem solving, dedicated towards addressing high calls for service on any particular block, be used to work alongside other police officers or community members. It's really up to their discretion how they use that 30%. And then the second component is the community collaboration around the Neighborhood Policing Initiative, and having the officers be informed by community members and what they believe are the most pressing public safety concerns in their district. We can't have police just be operating based on what they perceive to be the public safety challenges, because that might not always coincide with what community members perceive to be those challenges. Through this effort, we're intentionally, on a monthly basis, trying to convene officers and community members to really hash out what are the challenges, but also what are the solutions, and what is everybody's role in trying to address the challenges that are identified. So what it means to implement this for CPD is realignment of police roles, which I talked about. We have, through this, also the assignment of detectives to the district level. Right now, they're at the area level. So again, not tied to any community members, not knowing what's going on in any district. They just kind of come in whenever something happens and then expect to clear a case when in reality you can't, when you have no community ties.
Then they trade them out, right? So like even if they get some leads and they start building up something in 3 months or so, when it's a quarter change, they're sending them somewhere else. So it's like they don't even have a real system that allows them to build those relationships.
High turnover rates across whether you're a detective, commander, officer. Officers are constantly moved, and that actually was a challenge with NPI. We would have a commander for a year, the commander leaves, and now it's resetting and trying to get them up to speed about what this new community policing model is. A lot of times, because there has been no official policy given through by the superintendent, even though NPI again's been around since 2019, has seen multiple mayors, multiple superintendents, no official general order has ever been given to commanders on this, so commanders tend to use officers as however they please. Hey, I don't have a beat card filled, I'm gonna use my DCO to go do that, even though that's not their responsibility. Causes a lot of frustration and disappointment from those officers that signed up to be DCOs. The third component here is dispatch. OEMC needs to be very much involved in this and understand that they can't dispatch officers outside of the beat that they're serving. Then that breaks geographic integrity. So OEMC is very much a part of this, and then engagement district-wide in order to do that collaborative problem solving. Here's a little bit about what the DCOs do. They're the ones coordinating a strategy. Why? Because they have the time. They're not a beat officer. They're not responding to 911 calls like a beat officer is. Their whole shift is literally them trying to coordinate a public safety strategy for the most pressing challenges in the district. And how do they identify what those challenges are? Through the networks that they build, the meetings they're attending, the 911 calls for service. We see here the SDSC rooms. Are people familiar with the SDSC rooms? No? It's like a room basically that districts have where it's like they have access to cameras and all this.
Camera,
Yeah.
that's your license plate reader cameras, and you can track
Yeah, so the DCOs go in there, maybe meet with them once a week, say, hey, what's been going on? What should we focus on this week? What do we spend our time, that kind of thing. Again, there's no officers that have the time to do this level of policing that we're talking about, this collaborative problem solving. So it's DCOs is what that's what they're doing. Let's see. Here's how when NPI works, this is how time is broken down and spent. DCOs. Look at all that community engagement. It's like 85%. I don't have the numbers here, but I know that's 85%. The blue is 85% is dedicated to engagement, problem solving. Even beat officers have 30% of their time off of radio. So yes, the majority of the time of a beat officer is going from call to call. But when MPI is operating and is appropriately staffed, we see that beat officers can have up to 30% of their time off of that radio and be dedicated towards trying to coordinate that strategy alongside DCOs, alongside community members, and that's something that's not happening right now.
Now, are these of the 7 areas that CARE is in?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Or
this is for the NPI districts, which are
NPI
10
only?
districts. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, so again, emphasizing community engagement for the co-production of public safety. And when we were operating this was really like us trying to, when the police department said, hey, can you help us with this? We're like, yes. This cannot be owned by the police department because then it's going to turn into CAPS. And right now, there's nobody in the community that could necessarily facilitate this new model. We'll step in and be a mutual convener between community members and police officers until hopefully one day ECPS passes, and it passed. And then we have district councils. And then we were like, oh, this is perfect. Like, we hand off the work to the district councils because they're in position to be able to facilitate the engagement that is required for a true community policing strategy to actually unfold. And as district councils, they're in position to keep CPD accountable to their community policing commitments. So we're like, yo, let's do some meet and greets. Let's hand off our work to district councils. Unfortunately, again, MPI wasn't on the north side, so like we didn't get to hand that off to you all. But
Did you hand it off to other district councilors?
yeah. But the thing was, like, as we found out, like district councilors came into the work with different levels of experience and expertise and their own ideas of how to run meetings. And what we've seen is in most of the district council meetings and the way they're like organized, we haven't seen that there's necessarily time built in these meetings to have like open discussion and collaborative problem solving going on. And so since that's been going on, our organization shifted our focus to how do we support district counselors, especially in MPI districts, to try to provide tools for them to help facilitate the kind of meetings that lead towards collaborative problem solving and really lead towards providing recommendations to the commission that the commission could use to really improve what the police department and how the police department services Chicago. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And let's see, here, what we saw was generally, there's an evaluation that Northwestern University was our evaluation partner for MPI. They did the last evaluation in 2023. And they found that although there was, at the individual level of an officer and community member, there was some higher satisfaction in terms of like relationship building, problem solving, and public safety. District-wide, it wasn't necessarily felt because the police department never fully dedicated the resources and the time to make this work. Even to this day right now, there's districts where there's 10 DCOs operating with 2 cars. There's DCOs that, just maybe still have to be trained because there's high turnover. There's challenges with the implementation, and so what we said was, at a very basic level, here are the elements for MPI to be successful if any district is interested in it. It's providing a policy or general order from the superintendent so that the commander follows what they're supposed to be doing, staffing these districts appropriately. And what we mean was, you know, even right now when commanders would be like, we have to take DCOs off because we don't have enough beat cops, we'd say, why don't you reduce your tactical units, your special assignment units, and make sure all your patrol is filled at the district level. Once all your patrol is filled, you fill your DCOs, your rapid response. Whatever's left over, then maybe they could be tactical units. There's no reason why we have way more TAC unit officers than beat cops. And that wasn't accepted as a recommendation.
Yeah, sorry. Do you ever sit down with the commanders and
Yeah,
say, this is
all the
what
time.
we think you should do?
Yeah, but it's not up to them.
Pardon?
It's not up to the commanders, that's up to the superintendent.
Of course,
Yeah.
but supposedly some
Yeah.
things go upwards, and
Yeah, we tried.
Snelling is a pretty good listener, but, so you're getting frustrated by presenting that, and not many of those ideas are taken into fruition.
I think it's unfortunate that we have NPI still operating right now,
You know.
despite a general order, despite a policy. It's unfortunate that we have commanders and officers taking this very seriously at a district level, dedicating their time, their livelihood and resources towards this, but they're not being fully supported the way they need to be institutionally to make this work. So, even as I speak right now, there's a DCO training happening tomorrow. There's a DCO training happening later this year. There are things happening within MPI, yet there's no official commitment towards this as being the official model for what community policing looks like in Chicago.
So it's all.
I don't know.
Is there a line item breakdown of where money is being spent with the MPI and the DCOs? Like, I'm trying to see where there's bloat in the Chicago Police Department, and we know that it exists as the largest budget line item every year. And I wonder if they're not making it an official thing that has real legs. What is the money that's being put into it? And are we as taxpayers getting a return on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say, these officers are, it's not like they're, this isn't a promotion. So it's not like they're like being promoted and now they're being paid more. This is like a volunteer position. They release a NOJO, like a notice of job opportunity, and then officers across the city can apply to it, and then CPD will vet those applications. They'll go through a training with these officers. After the training, they'll determine who the officers will be that become DCOs. So it's kind of difficult to answer that question because it's not like they're dedicating like separate resources for MPI. I think it's built in to what community policing, whatever community policing budget they have. But it's not like they had to hire additional staff for this. It was just literally, how do we, based on the staff we have, how do we reallocate certain officers, staff these districts so that it works? Even then, it's not quite working because they're not appropriately staffed. Again, just following down the elements, we need more training for these DCOs. We need the DCOs to focus on problem solving, not just like going to community meetings the way CAPS officers do. That's important, and it's a function of the police department, but when it comes to problem solving, it requires more than just attending a CAPS meeting. These districts need coordination within the district. That means amongst their fellow beat cops, amongst detectives, amongst CAPS officers, and coordination with city agencies and external resources, because what we found was that a lot of the times when we came together as community officers, the types of issues that were being identified were quality of life issues that often didn't require a police response, but again, people were calling 911 because that's the only number. And so then out of those conversations, we realized this may not require a police response. This may actually require housing, troubled buildings, and we need to secure that property, and that has nothing to do with the police necessarily. So, out of these conversations, we begin to realize we all have different roles, and we have to play our roles at the table appropriately so that we have safe communities. And then keeping track of key performance indicators through the tracking of reports, online reports, making sure these DCOs are tracking how they identify a problem. What are they doing with the problem? Who are they partnering with? How much time are they spending on that problem? We need to know what officers are doing on any given shift, and then what they're doing with their problem-solving activities. So I'll just kind of, just moving forward again, it's MPI still exists. It's in 10 districts. We're still, even though again are operating without official policy, we're still inspired and excited by the fact that there are reporting mechanisms that DCOs have been trained on and are actively filling out on a weekly basis. We know DCOs are reducing calls for service on longstanding issues. They're maintaining fourth watch designation, meaning that unlike a beat officer, they have a flexible shift, so they're not like necessarily working first watch or second watch. Depending on what issues are going on in the community, they could work that shift during whatever that issue or that time, during the time wherever that issue is happening. And that's important to maintain for DCOs to function appropriately. We're coordinating with OEMC to make sure that OEMC recognizes that they're on fourth watch, recognizes that they have a very specifically assigned geographic area, and that they're not to be dispatched outside of that area. And then, again, coordinating new trainings for DCOs who need training and just refreshers, generally speaking.
Could you explain that watch thing? I don't know that terminology.
So there's 3 watches that officers work, and it's like, morning, mid-afternoon, evening shifts.
Okay.
And the fourth watch is a flexible one in which they're not tied to the first, second, or third. Meaning, so they could, work any shift depending on what they see as challenges in their area.
What about 311 for some of this stuff? I mean, is that even a thing anymore?
Yeah.
I called 311 once years ago and they didn't know something that was pretty basic.
It's still a thing.
I'm talking like Paul works for the 40th Ward as a unpaid volunteer who files a lot of 311s. I spend my entire life on 311 in my office. It is a flawed program. But for some departments and for some things, it really is efficient. And there is a massive push with the new DTI person at the helm for modernizing 311 in a more effective way. So like even when you talked about the dog, like there's a 311 for that, and CACC comes out and handles that, but CCPSA is understaffed and going through its own stuff. So it's like even though these other programs exist in the city that could help with it, all of them are understaffed and spread thin across the city.
And I want to do more work with you guys. We're the forgotten team.
Yeah.
The Northside team. So
I'm always about it. I feel like the north side is so, you all are really trying to move things along, and I don't care where the enthusiasm comes from for this kind of stuff. I want to help the city. I'm a Chicagoan, born and raised, and I'm seeing firsthand like where things are falling short, and there's only so much I can do. Like at the end of the day, I'm like a consultant telling CPD, hey, this is what you should do. It's up to them to decide, hey, I want to do that. But because we have bodies like yourselves, like we could do so much more to hold them accountable and drive policy to make sure that these things are happening. I would love to work with you
So
all.
we have a new superintendent, and now we just got a new head of OEMC. Do you think that there's like a path forward where this could be more successful with these newer folks?
The new right now there's a process going on with the Civic Consulting Alliance where they were tasked to look at community policing, and then provide a report to the superintendent. I would try to look to you all as district councils to see what that report says. I would love to make sure that that report is publicly available.
Or you said it's the Civic.
Consulting Alliance. And they're supposed to produce this report. There's workshops that were hosted across the city by 8 different agencies.
Yes, but there were 2 in-person sessions north of Madison Avenue.
Yeah, so my understanding was that
All the rest
all
of them
were
We're
south and west. And when I asked about them, I'm like, hey, are there no north side ones going on? What I was told was that this was open to everybody. The organizations that applied to host these were all west and south side organizations, so that's why they're on the south and west sides. I don't know anything about that, but what I will say is each of these organizations are supposed to produce a report based on the workshops they hosted that is given to the superintendent. We should see what those reports say because it's about community policing and alternative response. So the superintendent has publicly said, we want to see community policing, every officer be a community policing officer. MPI has a way to operationalize that. And regardless of what CPD ends up doing, we strongly believe, based on our research across the country, that any successful community policing model will have elements of NPI. So whether it's called NPI, whether it's called DCOs, it doesn't matter. What the functions and operations of a successful community policing program will look very similar to this. So we'll say that, yeah.
Now, you were saying that the commanders are not the ones that can decide whether to move forward with it.
No.
Is that because it's really the superintendent?
Yeah.
And the superintendent has not been backing this?
He hasn't committed to anything one way or the other. From my understanding, the superintendent is trying to evaluate what community policing has looked like in Chicago, and then based on whatever that evaluation is, he will come up with a plan. I hope that that plan involves you all as community members, you all as district councils, but that's my understanding of the process right now.
Okay. And do you think that it has to do with the mayor's point of view?
I have no idea, honestly.
Okay.
I don't know.
Good luck.
So I would just add that there have been multiple superintendents between 2019
Yes.
when they actually brought this
Yes.
program to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And so the current superintendent has not committed to enlarging it and has done nothing to stop it. He just sort of said, we'll leave that alone, we'll do these other things, we'll get this community policing engagement program, we'll look at what the workforce allocation study says, and then we'll come up with something.
Pretty much what's going on right now.
I mean, this is just a comment. First of all, thank you for all this amazing information, all the work that you do. We certainly do need lots of help here in Chicago. But I do think that one thing that's very disappointing is that District 20 just got a new commander who was at her first meeting last week. As far as I can tell, there's nobody here representing the 20th District Police Force. This would have been a really important time and really effective for somebody from, the 20th District Police to engage in this conversation because, we could learn a lot from them. And I think that's one thing that we should all think about in making sure that every meeting there is somebody from the district from CPD being represented so they can hear how important it is from us, the community, right, that we support this. And so I don't know if we can make calls to her or what you district council members think would be the best way to maybe put some pressure on the new commander to have somebody showing up, because I believe she said last month that she did intend to be here every month, and this would have been an important meeting. So hopefully
And
we
there's a
can.
general order now too, so.
Exactly, exactly.
So
So,
can build
it's-
that as a common.
There-
For the
there's so
commanders to come
few-
to each meeting,
Or a
CPC.
representative.
or a representative.
Yeah.
I will be present at the training of that.
Oh, nice, the general order?
They invited district counselors to watch
Great,
them train commanders on the new,
nice,
order, so I will report back.
yes.
but if there's
So,
something that we can do, you
You'll
know,
be there
as
for-
community
with
members.
all the commanders,
Yes, I believe
or
so.
probably, you
Yeah.
know, 1/3 at a time or something. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested to see how the process itself works, because
Yeah.
I was told by a previous commander that these new orders come out and officers are supposed to like memorize them,
Yeah.
and I wonder if that's happening.
Sorry.
So I'm just curious.
What's the training for new officers to?
It's for the commanders on the GO 111, which is what the commission and the Chicago police agreed upon for the district councils, and like the expectation of the partnership between CPD and district counselors.
That's good. Bring up power. You don't have any power. That's the problem with these things. You know, this is a great education, and I'm not dissing it, okay? But, you know, I started this thing 16 months ago with the civilization, hire civilians to cut costs and to get the cops more time, so they can't say I need more overtime. It just pisses me off that it takes 16 months to try to come to something, and then the allocation
I
gets
mean, it
in the
took
way.
2 years to come to an agreement on the GO 111, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so
yeah,
this is
yeah,
how
yeah.
long these things
Meanwhile,
back and forth and.
No, all right. You know, I move that we take your idea to hire more financial people to take care of the parking issues and things that they can do. And we take a vote on it, and we give it to Andre.
Wait,
And we
let's
tell
go there.
Andre, no, wait. We tell Andre to bring it to the city council,
He has,
okay? And-
every budget season.
Yes, we gotta do some of that. We gotta do some of that, because you have no power, and we're just
What we need to do
educating
is
one
look at
another.
the Chicago police budget,
Mhm.
because it's the
Mhm.
largest of
Mhm.
all budgets,
Right.
right? It takes up a lot of our resources, not all of them, but a lot of them.
More than
And see
45%.
where we can remove money from there so that we can spread it more evenly amongst all the other city departments.
Yeah.
And until we take a hard look
Audit.
at the CPD budget, we as a city are not in a financial position to be adding more staff to these departments. Until we audit CPD, we cannot move forward, and that's what we should all be screaming to the top of our lungs, is to audit.
Which is another reason why we really need to have people from CPD here every meeting.
Really quickly, Patrick, then Paul.
Okay, just a real quick question, and then I was gonna ask you to go back to the stats thing. Is there like a one pager about like these stats or anything like that? Like this report that I could take to my CAPS meeting and bust it, like, everybody talking about, you know, like, bring CPD to these things. I go to my CAPS meetings, like, I go yell at some people down there, or maybe not yell, but like, just talk very strenuously, and like, you know, I mean, gotta get it to our council members that aren't Andre.
There isn't a one pager. That's a good idea.
Okay.
What we have done though is for some districts, just analyze their calls for service
Okay.
per district.
Ooh, that's good.
So maybe that's something this district's interested in.
Oh, I'm definitely interested.
We could maybe just do that, look at your calls for service, and then based on that, give a percentage of what we think could be diverted.
That would be awesome, because like, if you go back to these stats, like, I wanna, like, point something out really quick, because like, when you talk about civilianization, and like, things like that, New Orleans went through this for years and years, and if you're worried about 16 months, don't hold your breath. But, like, when we're talking about this, like the 70,000 calls for non-fatal traffic accidents, right? They did a study in New Orleans where they found out how much the average time that police officers spend on non-traffic, or non-fatal traffic collisions. It was around, like, they gave it the easiest one, which was like 35 minutes, with 70,801 calls. Like, I just did some back of the thing math. That is 35,000 hours, or 35,000 hours, which is 1,458 days, which is 4 years of manpower spent responding to non-fatal traffic collisions. And it's like 4 years, with the budget that we've got with CPD and the overtime issues that we have, spending 4 years worth of manpower.
And this is 2023, right?
Yes.
This is just
And,
in a year.
and this is just the ones that people call in, because we know that they're not calling in every single one, because just like New Orleans, there's probably 2-3 hours worth of wait time if you call it in. And that's 35 minutes, and I've seen several on Lawrence Avenue that take a little bit longer than 35 minutes to talk it out. So like, these stats are really important to get there, and like what you were talking about, like what is the monetary value of this kind of thing? 4 years of CPD manpower is like back of the napkin math. That's $8 billion. if we can get civilians to do that for less than $8 billion a year, we're gonna be making money and be able to afford some other things.
Absolutely, and that was my general idea.
Yeah.
Carol.
Paul and then
Oh,
Karen's
I'm off. I didn't see you.
Yeah, I just want to run something by you. What I do is a lot of my time, besides answering calls with Elderman, is work with a project out of Mount Sinai that trains community health workers. These are people without credentials. They have a GED or a high school diploma. They would like to work in healthcare, obviously community health workers, but they're not credentialed. And we teach them basic skills about, mental health first aid, CPR, communication skills, things like that. I wonder if there's equivalent, again, this is healthcare, so a lot of these people we're training were hired as COVID investigators. So it's a simple job, right? And I'm sort of thinking, well, parking enforcement's a simple job too, you know? Couldn't we sort of think about this model in a police context?
I've asked many times to be deputized.
Be
I
deputized?
swear, because I field a lot of calls in my day job that are centered around parking. And if it takes 2 weeks for DOF to get out, that person has moved, they're
Yeah.
still, they spent their time blocking a crosswalk and blocking ADA accessibility and whatnot. So like, I have said it, and what I heard from the last comptroller was that it is a very dangerous job. They are next to police officers and first responders. They are in danger when they're writing tickets because people are upset. So there's like a liability issue where they don't want to just deputize anybody. And Andre said something about a union, so they might be a union gig, which also, but it's nothing's
Okay.
impossible.
Yeah.
Karen?
This is great information, and I respect the value of data, and I also think that if you don't want to do something, one of the greatest tactics that you can have is to just constantly keep studying it. And I think that, it concerns me that CPD, the only thing that surprised me that you said was that other cities, you have not found that complete disconnect with the civilian, and police. And it just, it's like, I don't even know. We've changed systems. We've, got great people who are engaged in trying to make things better. And also, nothing really changes. And, so at a certain point, I am led to the conclusion that the system is working exactly the way it's supposed to. The way they want it to, which is that nothing changes.
The Ravenswood Lincoln Square has an excellent reduction of crime, violent crimes too, in the last 2 years. It is very safe, relatively speaking, to the 77 communities, where I think we're third. The Tribune said we were third about a month ago in safety. So there is progress.
Okay.
You just don't see it week by week,
Yeah.
And actually, can I say one other thing? And that's that, you know, we're actually per capita, if you compare us with Baltimore, Detroit, Memphis, even Dayton, Ohio, you look it up,
Yeah.
the per capita violent crimes, we're doing better than them. I think we're about 12th actually among,
Yeah,
in per
comparing us
capita,
to
so-
Memphis doesn't make me feel a lot better. but-
oh, I know, I know.
In regards to
Yeah, yeah,
police,
yeah. I know where
of course,
there are
Yeah,
improvements
yeah,
taking
yeah,
place.
but yeah, no, but I guess what and I appreciate maybe that focus on just sort of the results of it, but we talk a lot about changing how CPD operates, and I, you know, just never expect that any of that results in actual changes in how CPD operates.
Yeah, the
I mean,
budget just
especially if
keeps
you know
going
certain
up.
cities, right, Houston, it's like you have a conference, you invite the superintendents of those cities and they say how they did it, just like with gun violence, how that's how you get people from other cities who have success and you learn from each other. Chicago doesn't seem to be, so willing to learn from those who are successful. I think that would be the
Really?
number one thing to say to the commander and the mayor or,
Yeah.
You know, everybody is prideful about where they're from, and you know, I think Chicago likes to think like, oh, we're from Chicago, we do our own thing, but no, in reality, like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like, if some of these
Right.
things, we could just literally just adopt things that are working.
right, like the whole gun violence
Yeah.
movement
Right, well, but
nationally.
if the problem is the FOP contract, and they don't wanna give up positions, then this will never change.
Well, it hasn't because they don't want it to, because
Right, well-
we've been going around in circles for a long
But
time.
again, like, I feel like if the LA police union was able to say, hey, we're willing to stop responding to illegal fireworks, panhandling, gambling, like, why can't Chicago? Like, I feel like, and, you know, I feel like a lot of, maybe the union's concern might be like, oh, if we don't respond to 30% of calls, does that mean less jobs? No, it means your officers will be focused on what they're trained to be doing lawfully and handling violent crime, like, not anything else that you, outside of that. Parking, false burglar alarms, traffic collisions, like animal control, like, that's what we're talking about, at least, but I also don't wanna be like all down on Chicago either, because we have the most democratic police accountability system in this country with these district councils, and they're brand new, so I think we need to support them and make sure that we equip them with the information and the knowledge and skills so that they're able to advocate on our behalf and what we're talking about here, what we want.
Yeah, but what comes up from the district council that actually gets done, that you know of?
Oh my gosh, shots
Well, I
fired.
guess, I don't know.
I don't have to answer that.
You know, what gets done with the police department, let's say within 3 months that they send something. You know, Anthony Driver is frustrated with that. At the commissioner level, he's frustrated with that. And he came out publicly, you know, and said it, sometimes did a half-page article on the guy. He's got guts, and he's a smart man for a young man, and that's how he feels, and that's how I feel. I'm frustrated for putting my time in after trying to retire, you know, and for 16 months. What goes up to the superintendent or whoever, the assistant superintendent, and says that's a good idea, or Andre brings it to the city council, which I'm gonna bring it, please, we're, you know,
Contact your older
that ought,
person,
really
let
ought
them
to be,
know.
we ought to take,
Andre at 40thward.org. Specifically say audit CPD now.
Dude, I thought
He's
you
right
said,
here.
no. Just the
Civilians.
financial, your idea was terrific, that's a smaller start.
Yeah.
And if it comes up from here, and Andre brings it up to the city council, at least it gets verbalized publicly. And then people, you know, maybe in Oak Park and Rogers Park and Roseland and Lincoln Square and Ravenswood, they say, yeah, that's a good idea. You know, that's the way things get done.
Deirdre, did you say that, that Andre had brought it up at city council? I thought that's what you said.
Maybe more on Twitter than at budget hearings. But every year we do ask for all of the departments that are revenue generating departments that we hire more staff so that they're able to do more that gets the city revenue. So Department of Finance, that is something that we've pushed for every budget season, is to increase those staff members so that those teams are larger, that they're able to do that work. And then if I can send a DOF person out, they can respond quickly. No one needs to call 911. We can just eliminate that process without even having the CPD involved, right? If it's so good that someone can just say, hey, DOF, there's someone blocking my driveway, then they'll come out so much quicker. Nobody will even think to call the police because DOF will be so efficient. So like there is ways that we can even think outside the box.
I do think
Are you saying
that
Andrew did
CPD,
increase some people at the finance department? Is that what you said?
He's calling for it.
Done for.
He's called for it in
What did you
budget.
say?
I'm sorry, what?
He's called for it in budget hearings.
He's called for it, and
Yeah.
what happens?
The mayor decides the budget and what gets in and what gets out of it, and,
Yeah.
you know, I think they've been able to negotiate, don't quote me on that, but again, until we look at where there is the majority of our budget and reducing that, just like we all had to reduce our staff, we had to reduce everything, people had to make cuts,
Yeah.
vacancies were eliminated, nothing got cut from the Chicago Police Department. So when we think about budget and money and all of that, we need to start taking a hard look at where a lot of our budget is and seeing where we can trim that. We still have ceremonial mounted horses, right? But I can't have an additional staff member to help me in my office. You know what I mean? Like it's somewhere there has to be some hard decisions made.
Those horses look great in the parades, though.
Well,
They're
and-
great, they're awesome. I wish they'd be in good state.
And I'll tell you that as the person whose father did the research to actually bring the mounted police back to the city of Chicago, now my uncle, who was the superintendent at the time, got the credit for bringing it back, but my dad did all the work, and he said they can be helpful in a riot, but the reason that they were brought back was all PR. And so like there's no two ways about that. If we need to cut some budget, we don't need that PR anymore.
You wouldn't have to look very
On the
far.
horses
Wow.
now. There.
Whoa.
Okay, and with that, this is awesome. This conversation is awesome. So first, I want to say thank you so much. Really terrific presentation. I want to say a couple of things with facilitator privilege. One is the 19th Police District, as I'm sure you know, Mike, is doing a tremendous amount of work calling for the exact thing that Deirdre and you were talking about, which is calling for the Department of Finance to be expanded and having more calls, particularly around parking, diverted to the Department of Finance. And I believe all three of us signed a letter this month at our quarterly citywide district council meeting, calling, joining other DCs and calling for this exact expansion and diversion of calls. So that,
If you want to give public comment on that, the hearing at City Hall is April 1st, I believe at 10 a.m. But you can give public
that's-
comment.
Police and fire.
Public Safety Committee,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
good to know. So yes, so I think we are learning as district counselors how to self-organize in order to do the exact thing that you're suggesting, Mike, and like bring policies forward in a way that both the commission and city council will take seriously and listen and hopefully move forward with the superintendent. And so to that point, there's currently this Department of Finance proposal moving forward. There's also, I'm hoping, and we haven't really talked about this, but I'm hoping that next month either one of us or potentially Jenny can do a presentation specifically on CARES and alternate response, which I think we talked about at a district council meeting last year at some point, but it's been a minute and there are a lot of updates, and so my hope is that next month we can bring the even more specifics and details around the first part of Jose's presentation around CARE alternate response and the pushing we need to do to ensure that program is not cut entirely from the Chicago Health Department budget because it is currently on the chopping block at the end of the year. It is not, basically, the Chicago Department of Public Health has not guaranteed funding for the CARE program past 2025, even though it is only currently, I believe, a $4 million program, that even with expansion of that program, not fully, but a certain amount of expansion would only cost, I believe, $7 million. So really a fraction of the city of Chicago budget, and it is on the chopping block. And so,
Can we, and I know you're trying to wrap up, is there a way we could mix in like the workforce allocation people with the policing project people, and we can try to do a group?
Well, let me tell you, I'm sitting on a committee with the district counselors about workforce allocation, so.
Good, say it louder, please.
I am on a commission with fellow DCs about the workforce allocation and how we as district counselors can be involved in some of the community engagement aspect of it, which currently isn't being worked in with the Chicago Police Department and the agency that was hired to do the report. What's the Matrix?
one other thing I'll say is that I'm hoping that we will do a presentation on CARE next month, and I know for a fact that the 19th Police District, our sibling police district just to the south, has their district council meeting this Wednesday, the 19th, and Jenny, who put this whole presentation together for district councilors, is doing that presentation on CARE alternate response for the 19th Police District on Wednesday at 6 p.m.
6:30.
6:30 p.m.
There's 6:30.
6:30 somewhere.
Yeah, it's a 6:30.
I know, but where?
Oh, Lane Tech, sorry.
Lane Tech. At Lane Tech. 6:30 p.m. on Wednesday at Lane Tech. So while I want you to come back next month to our district council meeting to hear our version of the presentation, you also are obviously encouraged to attend the 19th district meeting this Wednesday and hear that directly from Jenny herself. All of that to say, I think, again, a little bit, Mike, in response to what you were saying, I do think as we're learning how most effectively to do our jobs as district counselors, one of those things is organizing ourselves to push policies forward. And so my hope is that through these presentations, such as one we received today, we're able to get people fired up the way it seems as though the folks in this room are fired up today around, like urging us to move these policies forward and holding us accountable to the police accountability work that we are doing as district counselors.
And Snelling would really, Superintendent Snelling, would really like to hear from you guys.
That's right.
He's made it abundantly clear that me speaking on your behalf is not exactly what he would prefer. He would prefer to hear.
How would he like to hear that?
Where are you
Because
working?
he could, isn't this a public meeting tonight? Was this, did we keep him out? Did you
Or
prevent
his
him from
commander
coming?
by chance?
Yeah.
I didn't specifically invite him, my bad guys.
That was,
No, but
I'm
this
sorry.
is- but seriously,
No,
how-
it
every
came up,
time.
it came
should
up
invite it
as
every time.
part of the consent decree hearing last Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
where at least 5 district counselors, for the first time ever, were on that call with the judge, the
That's
monitor, and everybody, and we brought what you guys bring to us, we brought to them, and he specifically told Deirdre that he did not want to hear from her, he wanted to hear from you all.
So will you invite him? Deirdre, will
So-
you invite him every month?
So in
Will
the
you
next
invite
one
him
in
every
June,
month?
and the
Yeah.
next one in June, I think that we need to have as many community members signing up for public comment as part of the consent decree hearing and telling them directly.
And maybe somebody might let him know, I voted for you,
Yeah,
so
these
that you
are-
could talk for me.
Yeah, you're an elected
That's
representative
why, I
of
mean,
us. That is
you know,
completely
that
unreasonable for them to
doesn't
say
make that
that you can't speak for us. That is exactly what you were elected
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Just reiterating what the.
No, I mean,
That's
I know
all
it's not,
it
it's not, yeah, that's,
Listen, if we flood his
But it
office
just-
with calls, maybe
but-
he'll actually listen to you.
but I mean, it does really speak to a lack of respect for the work that you three and that and you and all the other district councilors are doing. And it just, I get back to, well, it's just working the way they want it to work.
And
which is
like not
nothing
showing
else.
up here is a part of it, it's a big part of it.
And I will say, sorry, and this, you reminded me, Esther, of the other thing I wanted to say, which was, I did receive a response from the commander. Last Sunday night, she emailed me saying that she wouldn't be able to make the meeting last Monday because they had an event that she had to prepare for on Tuesday, and I let her know that she's in luck because the meeting was actually this Monday and not last Monday, and so she should totally come.
But you can also send a representative, because if we get parking tickets and we just don't pay them, even though we're supposed to, it's not okay, and
Right.
they're supposed to be here.
Yes.
So it's not
100%.
okay.
No, 100%. And so, all that to say, I think we are ironing out the kinks, and
No,
it
no, I'm
felt
not
like
blaming you at all.
No, but I think it made me hopeful that she felt responsible enough after February's meeting to respond for the first time to say she wasn't coming.
Yeah.
But send somebody.
So it would be her next time for this. But it seemed like a first step, you know?
An RSVP with regrets.
Right, an RSVP with regrets.
Or maybe
It's been a long day,
who
and
is
then
coming, if you're not coming, who is coming?
Yes, 100%. Well, and I hope she would come because it wasn't actually the day that she thought it was, but that's fine. Okay, we are over time, so I'm just gonna run through these things so quickly. Thank you so much again, everybody. Sorry for the everyone gets. Okay, we are wrapping up this meeting so expediently, but I want to just run through a couple of things before we do. One is. Thank you so much. Should have just left it here. Two upcoming meetings that I would love to have constituents of these commissioners join. This Friday, March 21st at 3 p.m. on Zoom, and then next Thursday, March 27th at noon, either in person or we hope to have a Zoom option. We are meeting with Commissioners Morita and Commissioner Degnan in order to talk about the importance of bringing a restorative justice community court to Chicago's Northeast Side. So if you are in either Commissioner Morita or Commissioner Degnan's Cook County Commissioner districts, and come up to me after if you don't know, and we can talk about it. Would love to have you be a constituent in the room talking about why it is important to you to have a restorative justice community court on Chicago's Northeast Side that incorporates our police district. So please do join. I need a commitment card for these meetings. As has been talked about in some of our previous meetings, the Community Commission for Public Safety is continuing to do their listening session series on traffic stops in our communities and pretextual traffic stops in our communities. The next one is once again on the south side at Tilden High School. It's this Wednesday from 6:30 to 8, so at the same time, unfortunately, the 19th District Council meeting, but you can join via Zoom if you are not attending the 19th Police District Council meeting at that time and share your thoughts on traffic stops in our communities.
Actually, there is no public comment
Oh, just kidding.
on Zoom. So you
Oh,
can
oh.
watch on Zoom,
You can watch.
but you cannot give public comment.
Thank you.
They've been very entertaining, I'll say.
Yeah, they certainly have
Make
not.
some popcorn and
Yeah,
enjoy.
a little spicy. If you cannot make it either in person or on Zoom, there is a survey. It is on the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability website, the CCPSA website, and also available via this QR code. The monthly police board meeting is on Thursday, March 20th. That is this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. As always, it is at the Chicago Public Safety headquarters, and you can live stream it on CAN TV. Isn't that fun? Yeah, I know.
How did we get on CAN TV?
I know. It feels like such a little throwback.
Is that at the headquarters, police headquarters?
At the Public Safety headquarters, yeah, 3510 South Michigan. And then, Beth, do you actually want to speak to this a little bit, or at all? No? Yes? No?
Sure, so, this is, a pilot program that, that COPA is, taking over, that will, for low-level offenses, so if you, if you make a complaint to COPA that an officer stepped on your toe and didn't apologize, you can actually sit down at a mediation session with the officer it should be, less, like, sometimes these investigations can take months to years. If you agree to go through the mediation process, it should go more quickly. And many cities around the country, Denver, New Orleans, have successful mediation programs, so this is a pilot. So COPA is asking you all to come out to Salzer Library on whatever day, the 25th, and meet with CPD and elected officials and the community to talk about what you want this program to look like.
These are the commissioners, the what, 7 or?
No, this is through
This is
COPA,
COPA.
the Civilian Office of Police Accountability, so they're one of the bodies that
Okay, well,
investigates
yeah,
police.
the head who just got
Yes,
resigned.
yes, exactly.
Yeah, but there's still somebody, head of the mediation program, is running a community meeting.
Who's head of the mediation program?
Daisha Mohammed.
Oh, I thought you said the person, okay.
And then finally, the monthly 7-person meeting of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability is on Thursday, March 20, it says February, but it's March. The Thursday, March 27th, 6:30 to 8 at the DuSable Museum. And our next 20th Police District Council, it says March, but it means April monthly meeting is on Monday, April 7th, so that is not our usual day, from 6, and we're gonna try and make it an hour-long meeting, but we'll see, because there is a,
2011 B meeting after that. And I think if we're all energized, we could all meet there and then go show up at B meeting.
at the B meeting. So we're trying to be collaborative meeting partners. So on Monday, April 7th, our meeting will be from 6 to 7 at the Zazian, and then maybe we'll all go to the opposite side of the ward and go to the 2011 B meeting at 7 p.m. So thank you all so much for coming. You know, we started 6 minutes late, we're ended 6 minutes late. We run a tight ship here, I guess. We're concluding at 7:36. Thank you so much. Have a good month. See you next time. Well, yeah, no. Jose, will you take a picture with us?
Where's the face? Oh, it's off of, uptown, off of. Yeah. Right off of,
Yeah.
Laura, you know, will you take her?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
No, I didn't grow.
I lived in 2012, and I stopped going to the campus meetings. I found them useless. I mean, they have to come in and talk to you statistics,
With
questions,
some of these
no,
folks here in the room, are part of the team that actually wrote the ordinance profile picture. We wrote the
RP is like the lowest crime rate in the world.
we have a bunch of actually on your side.
I know, you know who that
You don't need to set
But
up.
also, it's,
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of
Yes.
crime, and a lot of actual scenes
Okay.
Yeah, so
I just had a hard time getting their schedule too. I mean, I got what Delmer's office, but
It was frustrating.
Okay,
I
now.
don't know when the meetings are.
I don't know, maybe sitting in
We do a lot.
I really am interested in the,
And they
That's that consistency.
yeah.
As you're doing it, like they're gonna respond to you.
Yeah, and
yeah, somebody would have to know that
I have so many ideas. Thank you so much.
Probably on my meeting, because everybody
This meeting, yeah.
I'm like, this is the forum.
Yeah, this
All
was
we're
right,
talking
yeah.
about. We're trying to figure out steps. I'm trying to figure out how it stops. After here, they're like, I ain't got time to do this. That's what happens after you.
We'll take nothing, sit down.
You don't see it.
I guess my
So
own.
I think
You know,
Yeah, there's things that are
but the police that hate
the opposite of what that they.
Okay, can we take one where
So package is full, package is not full.
How can you, something that is the opposite
It's just a
of what
matter
your
of
job calls you?
It's so funny.
Yeah, I'm
Interesting.
gonna give it a sign.
Thank you.
I do have to schedule this week.
I can't make an excuse.
Yesterday was when they
Very good to meet you.
I should stop it! Like anyone needs to see any of that.